I am Anand Dangre, and today I got an opportunity to conduct an interactive session with our today's guest speaker. I welcome you all on behalf of Life School. Aparnaji giving you a short introduction about Life School and its founder. Narendra Goenani is the founder of Life School, likes to help people find answers, solve problems. Narendra Goenani is also the founder of Wow Parenting. Wow Parenting guides parents in becoming wow parents while having loads of fun in the process. More than lakh parents impacted because of this initiative. Narendra Goenani also believes the youth of India has the potential to take the country to its deserved position on the global level. To empower students, he started Keep Moving Movement, a social initiative that is focused on imparting life transforming training to teachers and students. Keep Moving Movement has trained 30,000 plus teachers and impacted 2,45,000 plus students. Friends, as you all know, that under our program, Fitness and Lifestyle, we are interviewing eminent personalities in the field of fitness. And today we have one such guest speaker. हौसले के तरकश में कोशिश का वो तीर जिंदा रखो. हौसले के तरकश में कोशिश का वो तीर जिंदा रखो. हार जाओगे चाहे जिंदगी में सब कुछ, मगर फिर से जीतने की उम्मीद जिंदा रखो. जीतने की उम्मीद जिंदा रखो. ऐसे ही जीतने की उम्मीद जिंदा रखी और कामयाबी हासिल की हमारे आज के सम्माननीय अतिथि ने. Our guest today is someone who is told by the doctors that she would never walk again. But she not only walked, but ran. Not just ran, but climbed. Not just climbed, but conquered. Conquered highest peak. She is the first woman from Maharashtra to have conquered the Mount Everest. Yes, friends, today we have special guest Aparna Prabhudesai. Aparna Prabhudesai is a behavioral physiologist, psychologist who works in the corporate leadership and organizational development space. She turned to sports at the age of 43. She cycles long distances, runs marathons, and climbs mountains. She has run and completed the 89-kilometer Comrades Marathon in South Africa. She has cycled a distance of 643 kilometers within 31 hours during the Deccan Cliffhanger cycle race. Aparna ji has been awarded the Shiva Chhatrapati Krida Puraskar, Maharashtra state's highest sports honor. And now Aparna ji is working with her foundation, Adventures Beyond Barriers. Our Bharti Goedani and Aparna ji were part of the same group at Everest Base Camp. So welcome Aparna ji, and it's such an honor to have you over here.
Thank you so much, Anandji, for this opportunity and for inviting me over. I think I'm honored to be here. I've had the privilege of Bharti accompanying me. When I took a group to Everest Base Camp, I take one every year to the mountains. Last year, COVID changed those plans. But every other year, right from 2013, when I went for the first time on my own, after that, every single year, I've been taking a group. And Bharti was a part of one such group that I led for the base camp. And of course, I have known of Narendraji's work for quite some time now. He does a lot of work, and there's some amazing social impact that he creates. So definitely an honor to be here today, to be able to interact with everybody and talk to everyone. So thank you for this honor and opportunity.
Great. Thank you, Aparna ji. Aparna ji, may we begin our discussion?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Aparna ji. Aparna ji, we are eager to have a short glimpse of you as an individual, your story right from the first step that you took as a child to your conquering step on Everest.
The journey is not very long, or it's not something that I can express a lot about. Having said that, it's a journey of more than half a century now. So that creates its own impact. And I keep saying this now that, I have crossed the half century mark. I am looking at least another 50, most definitely.
Great.
When you land up and आप कुछ कहते हो और कोई कहता है अरे तो 100 साल की उम्र होगी, और मैं हमेशा कहती हूँ कि 100 क्यों कह रहे हो भाई, 110 तो दीजिए, 10 तो एक्स्ट्रा मतलब मिलने ही चाहिए, 100 तो खैर बनते ही बनते हैं, बट एंड आई एम वेरी वेरी सर्टन दैट आई एम गोइंग टू बी 100 most definitely, and a 10 would be nice, an additional 10 would be a great idea. So that's really and which is why I said there's 51 years of journey to talk about. And yet, very honestly, there is nothing much to talk about. I come from a very ordinary life. I was born in an army background. My father was serving with the Indian Armed Forces, and he retired, managing a large bunch of people. A large part of my life was in Jammu and Kashmir, because he grew up there. I grew up there. He was serving. A large part of his service has been all along the borders, both Siachen and on the west with Pakistan. So that's been the growing up environment, and yet a very ordinary, normal. If I was in the civil life, I would say a middle class family environment. Grandparents in the house, my brothers, me. Growing up, I was always told there was no difference between my brothers and me. And yet at every stage, I think I saw that there was a very clear difference. And I guess, so the normal stereotypes exist for all of us. As women especially, I think, अरे आप दोनों में कोई फर्क नहीं है, आप और भाई कोई फर्क नहीं है. And yet there are lines that get drawn. Though I must say that the army brought in a lot of the personality that I am today. The ability to live with changes, the ability to the ability to adjust to anything that life gives you. A certain amount of, and those are on the positive sides. On the negative side, there's probably a certain amount of rootlessness. I constantly need change. लोगों को बदलाव पसंद नहीं आता है. मेरे साथ ऐसा है कि एक 2-3 दिन बाद अगर कुछ चीज बदले ना तो कुछ पसंद नहीं आता है. The only consistent things I think that have been in my life now has been my fitness routine, and that too I think is new, because all through very ordinary school life, and yet when I say ordinary, I've changed 12 schools in 12 classes. Primarily because my 8th standard I changed 3 times, and that is where 12 schools in 12 classes. But very, very regular school, a very regular college. All through school and college, I was never a sports person. I never liked sports of any sort. कपड़े गंदे होते हैं और मुझे वो पसंद नहीं है. So I was never into sports in any form. And then, I guess, as I said, that with brothers, growing up, all of that, still with my grandparents in the house, and not just my grandparents, my great-grandparents were in the house. So while, of course, मैं जो ये 110 साल की बात कर रही हूँ ना आपसे, I'm sharing a small secret with you. My genetic pool, in terms of life pool of my genes that I get in inheritance, has longevity. So मैंने कुछ बहुत अलग किया उसके लिए ऐसा नहीं है. मेरे जो 110 मुझे विरासत में मिले हुए हैं. It's like that. I'm very lucky, touchwood, my Nani ji is still around today. She is at 98, hale and hearty, fit and fine, all good with her, genuinely, touchwood. I have seen all my 4 great-grandmothers. So we had multiple generations in the family. And some of those pressures naturally came on. So at 18, when I was in my final year of college, my parents felt, my father especially, we should get her married because college hote hote ladka ढूंढेंगे. अब किस्मत ऐसी थी कि उनको लगा शायद साल भर लग जाए, बेटी ऐसी पता नहीं कौन शादी करेगा नहीं करेगा. Lekin with their luck, we found the first person really that came in, and that was it. And in my final year of college, I was already married. So at 18, married, and in a very ordinary life in that sense. And yet I kept traveling with my husband. I've been very lucky. I've gone through 32 countries in the world so far. So there's been a lot of global exposure. At the same time, I think for me, a greater place of pride is, as an Indian, and I'm one of the rare Indians, and I will say that with pride, I'm one of the rare Indians who has been through every single state in our own country. And that is of great sense of pride for me. That खुद हमारा देश इतना खूबसूरत है और वहां से इतना सब कुछ सीखने को मिला है. And that also was part of the life journey. And then one got busy with life, kids, their schools, all of that. कहाँ जिंदगी कट गई पता नहीं चला. And before I knew it, at 41, I remember this was 2011, I was about 42 years old, and suddenly a medical condition came up. And that sort of had me relook at life. And when I was being told that, ये ऐसे ही होगा, इसके आगे आपके लिए कुछ भी कर पाना मुश्किल है, you will have to resort to a wheelchair or dependency and not moving. And once I did that, I think कुछ महीने, करीबन 1 साल, 1.5 साल वैसे निकालने के बाद, I one day stood up and asked myself, is this how I want to lead the rest of my life? And took a choice or made that decision of saying, no, this is not what I want to do. And that was the turning point, really. Changed things, set out saying, I will, prove the doctors wrong. I will prove medical sciences wrong. I will not just walk and show them. I will run, I will cycle, I will reach the highest point on earth. And the dream for Everest was set out. And 4 years later, I was on the top of Everest.
Wow, great. The next question is, who inspired you to scale Mount Everest? Because एक बार एक छोटा टारगेट रखना एक नॉर्मल इंसान के लिए होता है, बट एकदम से माउंट एवरेस्ट की ओर जो सोच आपकी गई है, so what was the reason behind that?
So as I mentioned to you that, when I was being told I could never do this again, Everest actually happened in a moment of anger. बहुत गुस्सा थी, भैया से बात कर रही थी, मेरे भाई, बड़े भाई कनाडा में हैं, he's a doctor, and उनसे बात हो रही थी, and I told him, all this is rubbish, I don't believe this, and I'm going to prove you people wrong, and not just this, I will run, I will cycle, I will climb the highest point on earth. And he said, अच्छा फिलहाल बहुत गुस्से में हो, सो जाओ, सुबह बात करते हैं. And morning when he called me, he said, थोड़ा गुस्सा ठंडा हुआ तो बात करें. And I said, no, I'm sure I'm going to reach the highest point on earth. And he says, okay. Highest point, by the way, is Everest. And I said, oh, okay. I hadn't thought about it. And then I said, so, kya hua? Everest चढ़ूंगी. And he was like, ठीक है, चढ़िए. मतलब, if that's what you want. He said, I had, and so, funnily enough, he had called me that night when we had that fight. He said, I want you to meet a doctor. And I said, मुझे किसी से नहीं मिलता. वहां से बात हुई, वहां से झगड़ा शुरू हुआ, and it led to, because I was just tired of meeting doctors. And जहां भी आप जाओ, ना उम्मीदगी मिले आपको, जब आपको हर कोई यही कहे कि भाई हमें पता नहीं चला कि आपको हो क्या रहा है, लेकिन हो तो रहा है और इलाज नहीं है हमारे पास. And that sort of, in that moment of anger, in that fit of anger, he had called to tell me there was another doctor, and I said, मुझे किसी से नहीं मिलना. Next morning he said, वैसे तो I wanted you to see another, particular doctor who's a specialized, he's traveling from Germany to India. I want you to see him and see if he can make a difference. And जब मैंने कहा कि नहीं, I've made up my mind, Everest तो Everest सही. He says, ठीक है, एक और डॉक्टर है, साइकियाट्रिस्ट हैं, शायद उनसे मिल लीजिए आप. He was so convinced कि अब तो कुछ कोई इलाज है नहीं. So Everest wasn't really a motivation in that sense from somebody else. It came from a place of anger. At the same time, I will say this, and I say this often to everybody, that, किसी चीज के लिए to एक प्रोत्साहन मिलने के लिए, या, to be motivated or to be inspired, all of us have our own Everests. And for me, it was the mountain. There was, the Everest exists. For somebody, it is about becoming fit. For somebody, it is about managing joint families. For somebody, it is about, giving up smoking. Any of those. Those are difficult decisions. So inspiration, personally, I feel, जब तक अंदरूनी ना हो ना, जब तक आपके अंदर से नहीं निकले. इस वक्त भी जो लोग मेरी बात सुन रहे हैं, मैं यकीनन कह सकती हूँ कि अगले आधे घंटे तक इस टॉक के बाद काफी जोश में सब लोग रहेंगे और वो जोश आधे घंटे के बाद खत्म हो जाने वाला है, ये भी मुझे पता है, right? The person who wants to make that change will get up and will action it, and that person anyway never needed an Aparna Prabhudedsai. That person was going to go and achieve as it is. So every one of us has to take that first step to our own Everest. I can only share my journey, and maybe you can pick up a point or two from there, but the struggles are inherent for everyone.
Okay. Aparna ji, how was your the reaction of other family members apart from your brother? So what support you got from your parents, your spouse, and your children? So can you share it?
So I think my father understood because he, as I said, he served in Siachen for a long time. My mother, she's always been a very quiet type, and she supports and she believes, okay, jao karo. The children, I think, took a while. They thought this is another one of Mama's crazy ideas, because I have these crazy ideas all the time. मैं हमेशा लोगों से ये कहती हूँ कि हमारे साथ दिक्कत ये है कि हम लोग सपने नहीं देखते, और जो हम में से कुछ लोग जो सपने देखते हैं ना, वो भी हम छोटे छोटे सपने देखते हैं, क्योंकि बचपन से हमको सुनाया जाता है, बताया जाता है कि भाई जितनी चादर है उतने ही पाँव पसारो, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा. So we are scared of even dreaming. We want to buy our first car, and वो हम 800 या WagonR या ऐसा कुछ सोचते हैं. I mean, Maruti came into this country with an entry car saying 800. I wonder why we didn't come with a Mercedes as an entry car. Our country is rich enough to afford those cars. But छोटे सपने. And I keep telling people, sapne bade dekhiye. So I think my family knew I was crazy enough. From my end, of course, I took them to watch Everest, the movie. Though that movie is about the south side, it's not about the north from where I went. But it gave them a little idea. And I think when we got out of the theater, plan was movie dekhenge, khana khayenge. No one was in a mood to have food. And mere bachche bade hain, so they understand what it is. It's not a young kid who you can say, "Acha, mama, jaldi wapas aa jayegi." It wasn't that. They understood what it meant. So they were silent. I was told at that time, "Aap kahin nahi ja rahe ho." But later they were very supportive. They were supportive. I did my work because it's not easy managing house, profession, and everything. आप एक चीज के पीछे जाते हो इसलिए आप बाकी चीजें छोड़ दो is not possible. It cannot happen that way. The balance has to be maintained. And just the fact that they did not interfere in anything that I did, and just the fact that they did not complain that I was not there for them, because those 4 years, 2013, when I was standing opposite Everest on the Nepal side as part of my base camp trek, and तब जब मैंने गुजारिश की थी उस पर्वत से, I asked that mountain, requested her to allow me to come up in 2017. Those 13 to 17 4-year journey, I haven't really been there for my family other than to maybe cook food and provide or whatever. But social functions were completely out because I would be doing my training. I would sleep early because I had to wake up early, etc. I was particular. I still am, of course, now. मैं क्या खाती हूँ, क्या नहीं खाती हूँ. Today I knew we had this session from 8 to 9. So I finished cooking my dinner earlier. मैंने 7 बजे से 7:30 के बीच में I finished my dinner in time because I don't want to eat after 7:30. So I have finished cooking. बाकी whoever can do whatever. And my parents are quite old now. So I carry food for them. मैं उनका खाना बना के I drop it for them, lunch and dinner both. उनको किसी और ने बनाया हुआ खाना पसंद नहीं है. My mother can't manage anymore. So I cook my place and then I cook for them and I come back and all of that. But I arranged that. And yet they know I've not been there. So that support, I think, was the greatest that I have received, really.
Aparna ji, which was your first trek in this journey?
The first trek was with this friend of mine who, asked me to join her. And this was when I was still struggling with being able to walk. And she said, "Will you come? I'm going to Himachal." She was going to Triond there's a glacier called Triond. The trek is Laka, so Laka Glacier, and Triond is the peak you go to. And she said, will you come along? And I said, "Arey, to chalna nahi ho raha, we come along kahan se?" And she says, "Don't worry, we'll figure it out. Agar ghar pe crutches or support ke saath chalti ho, we'll use walking poles and we'll manage." And we had a guide and a porter along who almost half the way either my friend was supporting and carrying me or I was carrying. But that was the first trek of my lifetime. I am from Pune. I mean, I've been a large part here for college and whatever, though I've never lived in Pune before that. Sinhagad was the only, and Sinhagad is hardly a trek, but Sinhagad was the only place that I have been to in the Sahyadris. I had never experienced anything other than Sinhagad, till then. And I went straight to the Himalayas. But then that was home for me. I'm born in Dharamsala, so I think the mountains are a natural home. So yeah, that was the first trek. Second trek was base camp. Everest base camp was the next one. So I had just jumped from there straight to base camp. I remember the first trek also when I went to shop. She'd given me a list, and she said, "You can borrow some things. Mere paas kuch hain. You can ask some friends." But I've never believed in that. I went and I bought the best possible equipment, and I had family asking me, saying, "Do you want to spend so much? Pata nahi, matlab, will you go on another trek? Kar bhi paoge ki nahi kar paoge?" But no, I think that way I believe in best or nothing, and that's when I went and I bought all the equipment. Also, I think something that is important to me as a woman, I always say this: I don't care what I do. I have to look pretty doing it. So it's extremely important to look good. I have to be color coordinated. I have to be perfectly matched. Matlab wo orange jacket and peely pants nahi ho sakti hain. They have to be matched well, which means the backpack has to match even as a runner, believe me, I've had the running community say this to me from the day one of my 3 kilometers, that tum abhi to chalna shuru kar rahi ho and you look like you're an ace runner. Very, very important. The shoes, socks have to match. The t-shirts and the trousers or the shorts have to match. Laces, headbands, you name it. And I'm a Christmas tree out of season all the time. So that's just me. It's very important. So the first trek was a memorable one, yes.
When did you realize that you are physically fit and ready for Mount Everest trek?
So physically fit, I really don't know. I was very nervous because I came from a condition which had its own troubles. My bones would break and I didn't know why they broke. And I started building muscle. So that's what my brother, who's a doctor, who told me. Once he realized I was serious about Everest that I was saying, he said, "Let's build muscle." And that's how the running journey began. I mean, 2013, I took my first 3-kilometer walk in that sense because I couldn't really run in those days. Then I started a little walk, a little run, and I started building muscle. And about 3 to 4 hours of training that I would put initially. The year for Everest, which was from October of 2016 all the way till March of 2017, before I left for Everest, I was putting in roughly between 5 to 6 hours of training every day. And which meant agar kaam pe jana hai 9 baje, if my workshop began at 9, since I conduct workshops as a coach and a facilitator, I would leave from home at 8:30, which meant, being ready by 8 o'clock or whatever. My day would start at 2 in the morning. 2 o'clock, I would get up, I would go and do steps because us waqt on the roads, I didn't know how safe it would be. And who can you ask really to accompany you? It's not possible. So I would do stairs and I would do 2,200 steps, I remember, every single day. A friend of mine lives on the 12th floor in a building. And in the building, I would go up and down with my backpack and getting used to that with the boots, especially later months were with the climbing boots. And I would practice. And फिर वो 4 बजे तक 2 घंटे I would do that. Then 4 I would get onto the streets and I would run and I would cycle. And I also, of course, coach, or rather I work with a group now where we do running. So उनके साथ करके come back home, do the housework, go finish my training, come back. And evening I would be at Parvati or Tarkeshwar or one of those places to be able to finish the rest of my hours that I had missed out on. But this was my everyday routine. I had a climber in the house and I would train and practice. So physically, my attempt was just that मेरी तरफ से कोशिश कम ना हो. Beyond that, the mountain would decide. But my efforts couldn't be less. So everything that I could do, and that's when I felt I was ready. I learned Nepalese so that in the mountains, last minute, I ought to be able to, you know, actually, if there's a panic situation, you don't, most typically we get into our mother tongue, and I didn't want communication gap there on the mountain. And I started learning and speaking Nepali, and it made a huge difference because, the community, the Sherpas, the other people would connect better with me. I found that easier on the mountain. So that was something I did. Last 4 months before I left, I had a tent in my bedroom and I would sleep inside the tent just to get used to that space. We have most of our homes these days, unfortunately, have a Western commode system. And I knew that on the mountain, one would have to squat and you can't, there isn't an option of a Western commode. And in my parents' place, we've got an extra bathroom or a guest bathroom on the ground floor. I would live on the upstairs from there. And ground floor had a bathroom. And morning, I would go down to that bathroom and use that and not use the WC in my bathroom, just so that I got into that practice of squatting. So down to the smallest of little things, really, that I was doing thing, apni koshish kam nahi honi chahiye. That is the critical part. Rest of it, we come from the country or the land of the Mahabharata. The karmanya vadhika raste says it all, right? The karma is what is important. And wo aapki mutti mein, that's in your control. Rest of it, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Then at least at the end of the day, you have the satisfaction of saying, I did my best. And maybe this wasn't meant to be. Because that's something else that helps me tremendously. I have just tremendous faith. It's not a particular God. Main puja wali insan nahi hu zyada. But there is faith in the universe. And the beauty is that the minute आप किसी और पे वो जिम्मेदारी छोड़ देते हैं, आपके लिए बोझा अपने आप कम हो जाता है. क्योंकि हमारे साथ दिक्कत ये है, हम सब अपने कंधों पे लेके घूमना चाहते हैं. जरूरत है नहीं, दे दीजिए ना किसी और के पास. Trust that what is right for you will come to you at the right time. And when we hand that, it's all done.
Can you describe your emotional state of mind in last 100 meters at Everest? Was it fear? Was it exhausting? Or was it excitement?
So I think it was more of no fear at all. There was no fear. Fear did hit me at Camp 3, which is what we call the summit camp. And fear hit me because the previous night we had very bad weather. We had reached camp and there were no tents. Everything had been blown away. We had no sleeping bags. There was no food. There was nothing. And raat puri aise baith ke thand mein guzari thi. And next morning, and there was very, very bad weather. There was just winds blowing like crazy. And when I came came from where we were sitting, there was this half-torn tent jahan raat baithe the hum log. Bahar nikle. And right across, maybe 6 meters away, there was this Australian climber who had come along. Aage piche the hum log. He was lying dead. And when I saw him, I think for a few minutes, I stopped to ask myself, main kya kar rahi? If I don't go back, what do my children do? If I don't go back, what happens to my family? Is it fair? Because I want to chase my dream, is it fair to put... Because जो इंसान मर जाता है ना, that's the easiest. Death is the easiest. People who are left behind, they are the ones who have to manage everything. So the dying is the easiest part of it. It's never difficult to die. And we all know we're going to go there one fine day, right? But what you leave behind is a thought. And wahan pe, yes, for a few seconds, I really thought, should I turn back? Also, I had this dialogue with myself and I said, how does it matter? Because at that point in time, the summit was about 340 odd meters away. 400 मीटर सिर्फ रह गए थे. 8,800 में से 8,500 कर लेने के बाद, that 300 odd was left. And I said, to myself, and luckily I said this to myself, that I'm almost on the top. Now, if I turn back, it doesn't matter. There is nobody from my family who's ever going to come up this high. My friends and family will not love me less just because I turned back. All this talk happened. And luckily for me, the word that stuck in my head was almost. That I'm almost at the top. I'm not at the top. And which means there is no turning back. Something that I have learned through my journey in life, there are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. And after having done all that, so those, when I did push for those 100 meters, and believe me, those are difficult, to give you an example or a context, Sinhagad, quite a few of you here have either seen it or walked up or whatever. So वो जो अतकरवाड़ी बेस है सिंहगढ़ का, वहां से ऊपर तक पहुंचने में, the distance that is there is roughly the distance that is from summit camp to the summit on the Everest. If I look at it as a comparison, height in meters. Now the Atkarwadi to the Sinhagad top takes me 23 minutes. The summit camp to the top was 11 and a half hours. That's the kind of कि आपको करीबन, and that's a calculated thing, कि आपको 100 कदम चलने के लिए करीबन 45 मिनट लगते हैं. TJ is listening to the conversation and he will vouch for that people run 1 kilometer in 4.5 minutes. I mean, the global record's at about 2 point something. The guy runs faster than I can cycle. But 4-4.5 मिनट में तो लोग 1 किलोमीटर दौड़ लेते हैं. मैं 4.5, I'm talking about कि 45 मिनट में आप roughly 10 से 20 कदम चल रहे हैं. That is your walking speed. So those 100 meters, while you can see the peak like that, every step is a struggle. So exhaustion, yes. Somewhere there is mental fatigue कि भाई अभी खत्म करो यार, बहुत हो गया. It's that also. And then, of course, the heart is pounding, which is saying, it's there. 4 years of effort, and it is right there. So it's really, it isn't one single emotion in that sense. It's just a huge plethora of just so many things together.
How did you celebrate your success of conquering the highest peak of Mount Everest?
So I think, first thing I would like to correct there. I didn't conquer Mount Everest. She allowed me to come up.
Wow.
It's we are too small. The mountains are way larger and they're gracious to let us come up. As a mountaineer, I'll say that till you keep, to be a successful mountaineer, the more you bend and walk, the faster you get to the top. And if we can adopt that in life also, it takes you to all heights possible. Jahan chaude ho jao, seena taan ke khade ho jao, you're going to lose balance and fall backwards, and there's no bringing you back. So the beautiful part is to allow, as I said, she graciously allowed me to come up. 2013, that prayer that I put out to her, saying, allow me to come up. 2017, she had heard that. And I think it was just that. I had planned I would go and, like a full sashtang namaskar kind of thing on the top of the mountain. But utni jagah nahi hai. So once I reached the top, it's barely 5 feet by 6 feet kind of a available peak top. I could just about go on my knees and straighten up. And the beautiful part was I reached way before the planned time because I practiced so much in that terrain. Ladakh ke 4 saal ka, every single January I was in Ladakh practicing on the same terrain. So when I bent down on my knees and I straightened up, the sun was just coming up. And one of the most beautiful sights of my life, because that's when I could see all the clouds around. That feeling of top of the world came in just there. I had tears in my eyes, which promptly froze. They say tears have salt and they don't freeze. Let me tell you, at that altitude, they do freeze. Either is the lack of oxygen or is the cold. And the night I went was a warm night. Okay, we were doing minus 56. When I say warm night, I'm talking minus 56 degrees. It's colder than what they keep dead bodies in the mortuary. But that was the kind of temperature. Everything just freezes on you. Everything. You have icicles inside of you. But that bit, that moment, it just said, all that effort, somebody had made it possible. The universe conspires to give you what you ask for. मांग के देखिए सब कुछ मिलता है.
Aparna, have you gone through self-doubt in this journey? And if yes, how did you handle them?
So self-doubt, yes. Very often, especially for my physical condition. The next trouble was the financial, because this is an expensive thing. And जब आपको हर कोई ऐसा मिल जाए जो आपको कहता है कि भाई ये नहीं हो सकता है, कई बार ऐसा होता है कि आप उस बात पर यकीन करने लगते हैं. That it is so that self-doubt exists, definitely. It's always been the case at various stages. But the three things that it's something that I believe in completely, and I say this in different forums, of course, that when I had my bone condition, something that I was told, and we know this, vitamin D and D3s, D3 is supposed to be good for your bones. वो हड्डी के लिए चाहिए, sun gives us D3, etc. I have a slightly different definition of that D3, and I call them devotion, dedication, and discipline. And those are the three Ds. So every time that there is self-doubt, devotion, वो जो शिद्दत की बात है, it has to be like worship. What you do has to be like worship for you. That's what gives that availability. So there is devotion, there is dedication, because you have to keep giving everything. You can't do things in half measures. And then there is the discipline. So if you have these three, self-doubt is natural. When we say humans, there is going to be self-doubt. But self-doubt then is in your control. When the others' doubt is where the trouble comes in. As long as the doubt is your own, it's perfectly in control. वो जो मैंने थोड़ी देर पहले बात की थी, that my faith is very strong. And I say this often, and when I say faith, दो चीजें होती हैं, मतलब एक श्रद्धा होती है और एक विश्वास होता है. And पास का अर्थ है दोनों का, श्रद्धा और विश्वास. पर श्रद्धा वो है जो आप जाते हो, आप भगवान के सामने हाथ जोड़ते हो और कहते हो भगवान मतलब अभी माउंटेन पे ऊपर पहुंचा देना, एंड दैट इज श्रद्धा. जब आपको किसी भगवान के पास आप पहुंचते हो. पर विश्वास ये है कि आपको मांगने की जरूरत ही नहीं पड़नी चाहिए. आपके भगवान को पता है कि आप क्या चाहते हो. एंड दैट इज दैट डिफरेंस. Our challenge is, a lot of us have Shraddha, Bhakti. We miss on the Vishwas. And the minute that Vishwas is on yourself, जब आप खुद पे यकीन करने लगते हो, when there is self-belief, then there is no self-doubt as a result. So that, I think, has helped me through, very honestly.
Okay. मुझे एक मूवी का डायलॉग याद आ रहा है. शाहरुख खान की मूवी थी ओम शांति ओम, जिसमें शाहरुख खान ने वो मूवी में कहा था कि किसी चीज को दिल से चाहो तो पूरी कायनात जुड़ जाती है उसे तुम्हें लाने में. So how do you relate to this statement?
I think completely, which is what I just said to you. I mean, of course, he says it with a lot of drama and all of that. But I would, I say the same thing, that किसी चीज को इतनी शिद्दत से चाहो, कि पूरी कायनात आपको उससे मिलाने की कोशिश में लग जाती है. And I say this very often, that I wish I knew, that I wrote books or I spoke in forums before Everest, because then that's exactly what that book, The Secret, talks about. And had I spoken about this earlier, maybe there would have been a different author for the book Secret, in all probabilities. But that's something that I've always believed in, that ask and you shall receive. and believe in what comes your way, because that all you can do is believe. We just need to believe in self, believe in the people around you who love you, believe in your work that you do. When people tell me that I'm bored going to work, and I tell them don't go, and they're saying nahi par wo to jana padta hai, and I keep saying there is no padta hai. आप जा रहे हो, you have your own interest. The minute you start believing in what you do, you're going to do that so well, because then the passion comes from there. That shiddat that we're talking about comes from there. So that's, that dialogue. And of course, Shah Rukh Khan says it much better. So let me not try, even attempt to say it like him.
Good one. Aparna, any anchor statement that builds your strength and energy to move forward?
So the anchor statement for me personally has been one step at a time. I keep telling myself this all the time, one step at a time. आपको जब मतलब Everest तक की journey, and the beautiful part was that this is something I've said to myself always, one step at a time. Out of that wheelchair, the first step, one step at a time. My first running, one step at a time. The first trek, to many multiple treks after that, one step at a time. A big leap to a big dream always begins with one step. वो पहला कदम लेने की बहुत जरूरत है. Very often when I speak, and I've had my family say this to me when I came back from Everest, some of my aunts and everybody, oh, अभी हम भी पर्वती जाएंगे और हम भी ये करेंगे. And I told them, आप थर्ड फ्लोर पर रहते हैं, आपकी बिल्डिंग 6 मंजिला इमारत है, आप उस बिल्डिंग के छठे माले तक चल के चले जाइए. That is your first step. पर्वती बाद में जाइएगा. Right? You dream big, but you take small steps. And the small steps keep you grounded. जमीन के साथ जिस दिन रिश्ता छूट जाता है ना, everything else collapses. So those small steps help you stay grounded. Even on the mountain, we take one step and we don't let go of the other step till that step has formed itself. एक कदम पक्का मजबूत रखने के बाद फिर अगला कदम. And that helps in anything that you do. I study a chapter 1 of a book till I'm thorough with it. Then I move to chapter 2 of the book, and that's first step to the next step. So that's really my statement, one step at a time.
Okay. Request to all the members, if anyone wants to ask any question to Aparna, you can write it in chat box so that we can take your questions. Aparna, what is the next big thing which is inspiring you in coming years?
Oh, plenty of things. I have a long list of so many things that I want to do. I want to be able to participate in the race called RAM, the race across America. It's from the West Coast to the East. So I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to, if possible, cycle from, Kanyakumari to Kashmir within India. I want to be able to run, across the country, the Golden Quadrant, physical, many, many things that I want to be able to do. On a personal level, of course, a lot of things to be achieved there also. All attempt now, of course, for me is all these things I would like to do with somebody, because now the only aspiring bit is about giving back. 50 years I have received. The next 50, I want to be able to give back. So those are really the aspirations, that whatever I do now is going to be about giving back.
Apart from climbing Mount Everest, which is the most rewarding moment of your life?
Oh, there have been plenty. I've been very lucky. Born to the parents that I've been born, part of the Indian Armed Forces in my growing years, watching my father pick up his rank, being married, having my children, starting my own firm and organization, Everest, my first run. There's just every moment. I'm a hopeless romantic, terribly in love with life. And मुझे हर चीज में, anything that breathes, animals, trees, landscapes, I fall in love. Every day I have a new thing that I fall in love with.
And that could be people, that could be person, that could be just about anything. I am an absolutely hopeless romantic. So, I mean, there's no hope for me on that one.
There is one question for you from Ramandeep Kaur. How you overcome your fears?
Fears are good. You have to make them your companions. Oh, मुझे किसी चीज से डर नहीं लगता is not true. But the minute you become aware that इस चीज से डर लगता है, your battle is over, because now that thing is not alien anymore. You take it along and you carry that forward, because once it's with you, it's part of you, you're no longer scared. And finally, what is a person scared of? You're scared of losing. You're scared of losing life, losing property, losing whatever. I've never feared losing anything. My house is an open house. Now I'm saying this on the social media and probably people are going to hear this. But मेरे घर पे ताला नहीं होता था. And I have a very simple logic that if, when I'm in the house is locked. But when I'm outside of the house, I keep saying that my children and I, if we are out of the house, there's no reason to lock the house. Because anything of value is already out of the house. Everything else in the house can be replaced. So there is no fear of losing. Today I am proud I have achieved all that I have achieved, but it has come to me and I didn't have anything before this and I was equally happy. So I have no fear of losing that status, that so-called fame, that so-called popularity, shohrat, shiddat, none of these things. Because ye kal nahi the mere paas, tab bhi I was a good person and I was a happy person. So there is no fear of that. And final one, which is death, it's so given. वो तो होनी है. Some of us will die with the fan on our head, falls on our head. Some of us trip and fall. COVID has taken away so many people. Why think about something that you can't control?
One more question from Ritesh. Yes, Ritesh wants to know how did you support your muscle building in terms of nutrition and meals?
So meals, I'm a vegetarian. Somehow I can't get myself to eat another life. So I'm a vegetarian. But muscle building happened with running, with cycling, with cross training. No weights for the longest while. Now that my bones are a little stronger, I do certain fixed muscle training. Rest is very, very important. So I rest sufficiently. I'm not attempting to meet any sort of unnecessary targets. When I plan for something, that is the time that I go and I work out extra. But other times I rest, and rest is very, very essential. My food, I'm very particular about, because for those few seconds of taste, I can't go around ruining the rest of my health. So if whatever I take in is not adding value to my body, I don't eat it. Okay. Personally, I don't eat anything that comes out of a package, which means anything that has a preservative or a date on it, I will not eat it. So biscuits and toasts and cakes and anything that is packaged, I don't have that. As far as possible, I eat raw or plain cooked stuff. जो हम खाते हुए बड़े हुए हैं, that's the kind of food I really keep to eat. Lot of fruit. I eat very early. Evenings beyond 7, I will not eat. So if किसी दिन कहीं बाहर चले गए और 7 बज गए and I have not eaten, I will skip the meal, which is okay. But I will not eat late, or I will not eat to make somebody else, okay, I हैं, so eat away. Don't do that. So that's really the meals and the exercise.
One question from Preeti Purohit. How do you manage family with your achievements?
Well, the children are grown up. So I'm very lucky. Things have happened to me at the times that things should happen to me. My parents complain a little. They don't get to see me as much as they would want to. But I think they've made their peace with that. With the children, I've realized that quality time is more important than quantity. And we've always had that. One of the biggest things is I don't have a TV at home. So बहुत सा वक्त बच जाता है because you don't do that. In fact, I've never had a TV. In my children's growing up years, as I said, quality time was important. we would do activities together. We read together. We played board games together. We did things together that helped us spend time. We talked to each other. We didn't watch, TV. Uh, we've tried to make it sing. We have meals together. Right now, the girls, my three kids, my girls live on their own. So the family doesn't really get neglected, I feel. As long as you're there for each other. I don't usually use WhatsApp. I'm not on the social media. I don't post anything anywhere. The human value is about connecting, and that is important. So that's what I do. I don't go around posting. I'm not a social media person at all. So जहाँ हो सके मैं phone पे बात करती हूँ. I avoid messages.
Can you tell something about your foundation, Adventures Beyond Barriers?
Yes. So Adventures Beyond Barriers, I work with persons with disability, and we look at creating inclusion for persons with disability. I realized in my journey how difficult life is for people who have any sort of disability, and we are doing that through sports, because sports is an equalizer. There is no gender difference. There is no man, woman. There's none of that. And there is no somebody's a CEO, someone's, an office boy. It doesn't matter. Only your sport unites you. So that is something because of which we are attempting to do that. So every year, what I talked about, I take people to the base camp on a trek. We have blind people go with us. We have people with various disabilities travel with us. And that's something that, we are continuing to do, and very hopeful that we'll get more and more people to join the movement of creating inclusion for persons with disability.
And the last and important question: what would you want to tell audience, especially women, regarding fitness?
Okay, so I don't think I'd say this only for women. It's equally for men too. And especially in the Indian context, because in India, and this is more for women, do it more than men do. So men also exercise, but a woman, when she goes out to do this, the biggest problem is she feels guilty. It's not friends के पास जाती हैं, movies में कहीं तो भी there is this thing of, there's a sense of guilt. अरे मैंने मेरे बच्चों को खाना नहीं दिया और मैं यहाँ बाहर शॉपिंग कर रही हूँ. अरे मैं जाके ये करूंगी. That is the woman problem, which the men don't struggle with, and I'm glad they don't do this. But the fitness thing, I will say this to both men and women, that your body is like a machine, and you have to keep your machine fit and fine every single day. And this is particularly to us Indians, because we are constantly wanting to be, जब आप पैदा हो जाते हो, आपके इतने रोल्स होते हैं. आप किसी के बेटे या बेटी हो, आप किसी के भाई या बहन हो, आप किसी की बीवी या पति हो, फिर आप किसी के दामाद या बहू हो, और फिर आप माँ बाप भी हो. All these, and in this, we want to be the best. I want to be the best sister and the best wife and the best mother and the best mother-in-law. All this. We are not just happy being us. And that's our problem. And we create those pressures. 10 minutes in the day, tell yourself that ये 10 मिनट से शुरुआत तो कीजिए, फिर आगे जाके घंटा भर निकालिएगा खुद के लिए. लेकिन 10 मिनट से कि ये 10 मिनट सिर्फ मेरे अपने हैं, मेरे अपने लिए हैं. उसमें मैं एक्सरसाइज करूं, मैं खाना खाऊं, मैं I dress up, I talk to a friend, I sing, dance, anything, or I sleep. But I do that for myself. That is the most important. आपने थोड़ी देर पहले पिक्चर की बात की थी, and you talked about Shahruk's dialogue. Similarly, एक और पिक्चर है जिसका एक डायलॉग है, करीना कपूर थी, the movie was Jab We Met, and she says, मैं खुद की फेवरेट हूँ. That is my statement. I say this all the time, that I am my favorite. I don't care what you think about it. आपको अगर लगता है कि I'm self-centered, so be it. That's your challenge. You deal with it. I am not worried. For me, I am my most important. Because सर सलामत तो पगड़ी 50. अगर मैं हूं तो ये बाकी रिश्ते हैं. So I owe it to myself to love myself. If I can't love myself, how will someone else love me?
Wow.
So very, very critical to be able to do that. And fitness is essential because your body, only when you're fit physically, can you be fit emotionally and mentally, and then you can do whatever else you want to do. If your body doesn't go with you, गाड़ी में फ्यूल डाला नहीं, गाड़ी साफ की नहीं, कल काम पे जाना है, नौकरी है पर आप जा नहीं पाते क्योंकि आपकी गाड़ी नहीं चल रही है, there's a problem there. It's the same with your body. Treat it with respect. You're lucky to have what you have. Be grateful for it and take care of it. Nobody else is going to.
Wow. Simply wow. Aparna ji, today's interaction with you has not only been an energy pill for our members, but also an inspiration to boost themselves and set benchmark to conquer our own Everest. And there are many takeaways from today's session. Personally, my takeaway, believe in best or nothing, devotion, dedication, and discipline. These are 3Ds which are very important. One step at a time, a big leap to a big dream begins with one step at a time. And I am my favorite. So I think these are my takeaways. I request all the members to share your takeaways in our fitness and lifestyle group. And on behalf of Life School Fraternity and on behalf of Narendra Ji Goidani, I would like to thank Aparna Ji for your valuable inputs and valuable time. And thank you to all the members for attending today's session. And best wishes and goodbye and good night. Thank you very much.
So much once again for having me over here. Thank you. Thanks a lot.